Okay, my friends, we're going to go back to the 80s again, but we're going to cover a powerlifter. Also, I didn't realize he did start his early days as a bodybuilder, although never had any really big wins in that area. But we're going to talk about Jeff Magruder. And here he is with Team USA at this time, and this is in the later 80s. And it's Doyle Canady himself. You got Doug Furness, Ed Cohn. Um, anyway, this first article, which again I got from a Diddalo blog, and I believe this was out of Powerlifting USA, talks about the benefits of powerlifting for bodybuilders, and he talks about how all the greatest bodybuilders with the most density and thickness to their physiques uh, have all had heavy lifting backgrounds, and he seems to like scope in on a little bit Franco, and he is a prime example of one of the stronger guys in the bodybuilding game, if not the strongest, at least in his era. Um, their intimidating size and shape started out with heavy lifting. He's talking about Platts here. That Platts had at that time even like 20 years of training under his belt. He didn't just pop up and start taking some juice and get the physique that he got. And same is true with Arnie. Arnie actually started out like as a teenager doing some lifting contests over in Austria and Germany. Um, and later on in his career, he didn't train as heavy, but there was more to refine the mass that he gained through the heavy lifting. And again, here he is focusing on Franco, and having seen him at the Scottish Rite Temple in Los Angeles, where he did a 750 deadlift, and he also did 710 for a triple, and so you could see. And here's his massive back. He's got quite the lat spread there, and it was always one of Franco's strong points. Um, Although he was accused of being blocky and stuff, he did win the Mr. Olympia, uh, and then he moves into talking about another big Mr. Olympia guy, and that was Sergio Oliva, and he talks about him benching 500 pounds for reps. So another really strong guy that got his mass through powerlifting movements largely. But he was actually Sergio was an Olympic lifter. He started out, and he talks about Lee Haney. And there's Sergio, and you can see. I mean, there's no question he's got very solid mass there. And again, he had been an Olympic lifter prior to his bodybuilding days. And then he was talking about all those guys, had a lot of years of heavy training under the belt to develop the mass that they did. Lee Haney was a little bit of an exception. He wasn't, didn't have as long of training as some of these other guys. But again, Lee, though he said stimulate, don't annihilate, he did do some heavy training, and especially, he did heavy squats to build those legs, as just about all those guys did. You really won't find anybody with massive legs that did it with, leg extensions or just machines or stuff like that. You got to train heavy. And in fact, I wasn't aware, again, that Jeff did have some local and regional contests that he did pretty well in before he got more full into powerlifting. And he always had a penchant for bench pressing, which he did pretty well when he started. Here he is getting ready to do a deadlift, and he ended up, as we'll discuss at the end, in the Hawaii Record Breakers meet, he broke 2100 in the 242s, which is nothing to sneeze at, and especially back in those days. But he says if you're going to lift more like a power lifter, don't give up your bodybuilding movements, but just do not quite as many reps and go a little bit heavier. And then he suggests training maybe 4 days a week instead of 5 or 6. And well, it's the top level bodybuilders of that era and today are doing 6 days and double splits and stuff like that. Here he is at 198, and obviously that's over 500 pounds there. I think it's like it might be 530. Looks like it might be. Um, and then he's talking about his experience winning some local, state, and regional bodybuilding contests, but he found his strength as a bench presser was better in the off season uh, when he wasn't doing quite as many assistance exercises. And he talks about that some of the top powerlifters of the year could step on a bodybuilding stage and do well. The first guy that comes to mind when you say this stuff is this guy Roger Eastep, and you can see he had a really good physique. But he pretty much stayed in that 198 class for the bulk of his career, I'm pretty sure. So again, he says, in conclusion, remember that the two sides of the game are not disparate from each other, but integral parts of the total process. And you should not exclude one for the other. Bottom line, do not limit yourself by being too focused on just one thing. And here he is again with a heavy bench press. But while Jeff was known for his bench press, which was phenomenal for the time and everything, he was a really good all-around powerlifter. Now, I happened to run across this '84 magazine in my collection, and it's Muscle and Power as opposed to Muscle Builder and Power. So it's not the Weider magazine, but they had this article in there about Jeff at the time, and it's kind of with a Star Wars theme. Bench presser Galactica. And he calls him Captain Marvel. But it mentions even at that back in those days, he was squatting, 727, deadlifting 690. He won Mr. Seattle, Mr. Northwestern States powerlifting championships, junior nationals, and a bunch of other stuff in those days. And here he is. He's got as you can see, he's got the serious mass there. Obviously, he's not cut here because he's in the off season and he's powerlifting training. But he's squatting some good weight there, and some of the like RC, yeah, he had a bigger bench, but he was a real bench press specialist. He didn't have big totals and stuff like that, like Jeff did. But he's talking about some of the sets that he does, like 4 sets of 4 with 540. And again, this is not at his peak. This is him doing 595, I believe it is. And we'll talk about that a little further as we get down into the rest of the video. But this was at a heavier weight class, obviously. But he also was quite the entrepreneur, and in fact, he had a gym that he opened when he was like 20 years old. Him and his brothers did construction. Actually, one of his brothers was his first training partner. He had 5 siblings when he was growing up. And again, he was into football and wrestling and stuff like that, and started lifting from that stuff, and then just really got into the lifting, found out that he was, especially gifted in the bench press, and became somewhat of a specialist in the bench press and was well known for that. He ended up, we'll talk about it, the Hawaii Record Breakers meet, where his top lift was like 640, which is a heck of a bench press at 242, and with the equipment that they had in those days. He talks about his family a little bit here. You can read that. And he's a well-rounded, family guy. Like I said, he's an entrepreneur. He ran a gym, ran some other gyms. Here he is doing 535 for 6, which again is pretty awesome. You can see he's got a pretty wide grip there, so he's more of a pec dominant bencher than some of the guys with the close grip with the triceps. He's asking him what his favorite auxiliary. Does high neck benching with pauses, and that's where he does some high reps with 405, which is pretty crazy. 535 for 6, tricep press downs, 200 for 5 sets of 6, and does behind the neck presses with some heavy weight. Yeah, and Ted Arcidi, and Bill Kazmaier and some other big benchers were big fans of behind the neck presses, but again, not everybody can really do those without messing up their shoulders. He talks about, in this case, doing like a 10-week cycle before a meet. Now we'll move into Powerlifting USA later article from '88 where he does like a 16-week program. Again, he's talking about that back in those days he was doing seminars and exhibitions and he was selling tapes. And interesting that he has a lawyer that pretty much schedules these things. And here he is squatting. And again, you can see those are 100-pound plates on there. So, he did more than this. He ended up doing well in the sevens in the squat. And again, yeah, he had a suit on, but it wasn't anything phenomenal back in those days. Talks about selling courses for $25. Asks about power rack training. And he says, yeah, for squats, partial deadlifts, and shrugs, the rack is great, but he does most of his training outside of the rack. Here again, he delves into the whole entrepreneur thing. A Magruder Fitness Center in Redmond, Washington, that he started because he was 29 at the time. This is 9 years ago when he was 20. And he does consulting work for a specific sports facility. There he is with some of the guys back in those days. Fred Hatfield, obviously. But you can see he's got a really thick chest there and a little bit of abs showing up. And then so the gentleman from this magazine is asking him if he has any ideas about getting back into bodybuilding. Mentions the American Universe, and he says, yeah, at some point I would like to do that. But he is committed to his family and powerlifting and his other entrepreneurial stuff. Now, this is the header page for the workout of the month Powerlifting USA routine. I'm going to skip the first part of that because it's just really reiterating some of the stuff that we've already gone over with these last couple articles. And we're just going to get into the heart of the actual routine. And here it is. You can see, and he talks about that these first 8 weeks is basically overtraining. And then you back off. It's a whole lot of assistance work. And then he backs off, and most of that assistance work for that last like 4 or 5 weeks there, peaking for a meet. This is the magazine that article came from, and you can see, he's pretty jacked. Obviously, he's not ripped or anything, but you can see he could certainly lose some weight, get ripped up, and be very competitive in the bodybuilding world, and he was. At least at the lower levels, which is all he really seemed to aspire to back in those days. But again, this is just reiterating that the first 2 groups of 4 weeks is purposely overtraining, and then you get what he calls this residual effect. So this is from 8 weeks out, and exactly what he was doing. And like 5x5, which is a very popular scheme back in those days, it still is these days. And then he would do less than 5s, he would do triples and work down to doubles. Didn't do a whole lot of heavy singles before a meet. And I think, again, he thought that residual effect from doing all that extra assistance work would pay off more than doing the heavy singles in the end. Now, I have to imagine that this is his wife. Obviously, this is him older. Unfortunately, he did have, and here he is, 21:33 at the Hawaii Record Breakers, 639 bench, 7'7" squat, and 717 deadlift. So certainly nothing to sneeze at. And talks about the Hawaii, other record breaker meet where he had done that 595, which we showed the picture of. Unfortunately, after that Hawaii thing, and I'm not sure how long after, he had a career-ending injury benching where he hurt his triceps and I believe his neck. Here he is with the group of guys, obviously older here, and I don't know if that's a family member there he's holding or just friends or from the gym or what, but obviously he's older there. Now, unfortunately, he did develop ALS, and that's probably what led to his death. He died pretty young. He was only like 64 years old, and that was back in 2017. So that's going to be about it for Jeff. He did stay active as long as he possibly could with everything that he was doing. But ALS is just one of those debilitative things. It just seems to get you in the end. And unfortunately, that's what happened with Jeff. So that's going to be about it. I thank you for watching. Rest in peace, Jeff. And somebody actually asked about doing something on some of the great benchers. They didn't mention this particular guy, but like J.M. Blakely is another guy we might do. There he is again at the end there, with again some of the greats of that era. And again, thanks for watching. Thanks for hitting those thumbs ups. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't already, please do so, and then you can get notifications for the next ones. That's about it. Thanks, and I'm out.